Hello and welcome to Ticket Manager's All Access interview series, engaging leaders from across the sports marketing spectrum to identify and explore critical issues in the business of sports, entertainment, sponsorship, activation, ticketing, hospitality, and even more. I'm your host, Jim Andrews. Joining me on this episode to discuss what's next for his organization and take a look at its evolution over the past decade is Bill Hancock, Executive Director of the College Football Playoff. Bill, it's an honor and a pleasure to welcome you to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, Jim, thank you for having me on, and it is an honor and a pleasure for me too.
Appreciate that. Well, I think to start, I would be remiss, given recent developments, if I didn't ask you about expansion. We know now that the playoff is staying at 4 teams through the 2025 season. But of course, there are lots of people who would like to see it grow after that. So can you just tell us where does the discussion stand at this point and kind of what happens next?
A couple of weeks ago, our board decided not to pursue expansion before the end of the current 12-year contract. The contract was signed by 18 different entities. And the only way to break any contract, of course, is for all entities to agree to break the contract and start all over.
Right.
And we just had a few people that said we're just unable to agree to change. So we will stand down now and at some point in the future begin to focus on what the format might be for the CFP beginning with the 26th regular season.
Right. So, I mean, that may be the silver lining there is, you have a few years to kind of line up all of the ducks that have to be lined up, right? And have all of those conversations and not have to do it with, the sword of Damocles deadline hanging over your head, I guess.
Yeah, we have a lot of ducks.
And not just the ones in Oregon.
Yes.
Well, beyond expansion, Bill, what do you consider to be the other top challenges or issues facing the CFP in coming years?
Just to continue to grow the event, draw more fans. We do very well. I mean, this is a first world problem. We are the second highest rated program on television behind the Super Bowl and maybe the Macy's Parade on Thanksgiving. I don't remember how that lines up, but certainly the second highest sports program in terms of ratings. But we're all, I don't want to say greedy, but we all want to bring more folks into our sphere. And those of us who love college football and have loved it forever need to understand that there are people out there who still need to be brought into the family.
Right.
And so that's one of our goals is to enhance the event in that way. I think further also enhance the brand. People are coming to know our brand. This will be our 9th season, but we've got some more work to do on that, and we'll continue. But we're off to a really good start in our first 8 years, and just really looking forward to continuing an event that has become exceptionally popular among sports fans.
I'd love to explore a couple of things that you said there a little bit more. And you mentioned, bringing new fans and kind of expanding the tent, to use the political term. There's so much conversation among all sports today about developing kind of the next generation of fans. We know that young adults, youth consume sports and media so much differently than previous generations. They've got different needs and desires. So is that something that is either a concern or something that the CFP is directly addressing at this point?
My generation consumed sports differently than my dad's generation did.
Right.
So it is so true that if there's one thing constant, well, it's the fact that there is change. We know that we are adding more people into the world as they are college football fans when they're in school and then they leave school. And what hundreds of thousands of people graduate from college every year, and they're taking their college football love with them. But we need to figure out whether we're doing the right delivery system to reach that coveted 18 to 49 demographic. I don't know what the answers are. I don't feel like we have a major problem, but you're right, it is changing. And while we attempt to make sure we're relevant in the year 2022, we also have to be thinking about, are we going to still be relevant in the year 2042?
That is the big challenge, I think, for not just for you, but for everyone. And I don't think anybody has the answers right now, but we're all working on figuring it out.
That's right.
You also mentioned the brand and continuing to grow the brand. So I'd like to take a step back because you really have in the past decade, which is a relatively short period of time, you've built quite a strong brand in the college football playoff. So maybe we'll start with that, like how you've done that, and maybe some of the major milestones there, and how you will continue to be able to build on the strength of what you already have.
Yeah, I love talking about this because if you think about it, we are the only major sporting event that has come online in America in the last, I don't know, when was the first Super Bowl? 52 years.
Right.
And so that was an awesome opportunity for those of us who love college football and get to work with this event. But we had to start off, and we had nothing. We had me. And so certainly we had to build a staff. And while we were doing all that, we were paying attention to the brand. And the brand, my belief about a brand is that you have to build a respected brand from the start. And everybody listening to this podcast knows a lot more about branding than I do, but we knew we wanted to get and maintain that respect. We knew the brand would be represented by the mark, and we knew the brand would be represented by the behavior and what kind of event we were running. Right. And boy, creating the mark was so much fun and such an awesome opportunity. I'll tell you a little story about the mark itself. We decided we were going to have an online voting process and let the fans choose the mark. Right. And so we contracted with a group to conduct this online poll for us. This was back in 2013. And we had 4 or 5 different options, and we put them all out, and it really included one kind of ugly mark, I'll be honest with you. And so we put it all out, and the fans began to vote, and this one bad mark surged into the lead by a lot. And so I'm thinking, oh no, why did we do this fan choose the mark contest? Well, the computing company that did the polling sheepishly called me to say, we've got a little problem. One person voted, I'll say 20,000 times for this ugly mark. So we were able to kick those out and then continue with the fan voting. And they chose that gold football mark that we now use. And very proud of that. And really proud that we had the public involved in deciding what the brand would be.
And I would think that the mark has certainly become iconic, and I would think that may have been the more difficult part versus the name, because I think the name, everybody leading up to that, I think, wanted the playoff, right? Everybody kept thinking, it's time for college football to have a playoff. The old monikers and things that were attached to that, BCS or whatever, didn't have that magic word in it. So was that pretty much decided from the beginning that it was college football playoff was pretty much the way to go?
Yeah, well, I have a story about that as well. We had a committee that was to choose the name, and I just imagine the clean slate that we had in front of us.
Sure.
And we explored all kinds of names with a lot of sizzle. College Bowl, I don't know, College Super Bowl, and really cool names. But we settled on the name that we have. And I conducted a news conference out in Pasadena. I'll never forget it. It was the spring of 2013. And so I go out in front of these lights and cameras, and I said, ladies and gentlemen, the name of the new event is going to be College Football Playoff. And a reporter in San Antonio tweeted immediately, if Bill Hancock had a dog, its name would be Dog. The point being that it's an imaginative name, but I said, so is National Football Association. So is Major League Baseball. So if we're unimaginative, well, we're following right in line. And now, of course, College Football Playoff and CFP are joining the vernacular. I will say that, and we're proud of where we are with the brand. We have a long way to go. What this will be the 82nd, I believe, NCAA Final Four. I may be off by a year or so, and this year will be our 9th year for the college football playoff. So yeah, we've got a way. We have a ways to go, but we are off to a really good start.
Some might say unimaginative, but others I think would say clear and straightforward, which is not bad in branding.
That's right. That's right.
One of the ways that the CFP is unique, in many ways it is, but is the relationship with this very big blue chip roster of corporate partners. Now, the unique part comes with the partnership sales and the revenue. That all falls within your media partner, ESPN. So the benefit that the CFP receives is not that direct monetary benefit that many other sports properties have. That's the first thing they would point to with their sponsors. But I imagine there's still a real benefit to you and the organization to having brands such as Dr. Pepper and AT&T and Allstate in that mix. Would I be correct?
Yeah, of course, you want major companies in the family, and ESPN understands that. I have a particular affinity for the companies that choose to activate, that spend a little extra money in addition to their media to activate their sponsorships. Love what Dr. Pepper does, of course, starting with Larry Culpepper back in the day, and now the new deal of Fanville. And several of our sponsors have chosen to activate and be an active part of who we are. We really like that.
You mentioned the 18 votes that are necessary to get things done. That's a lot of voices at the table between the conferences, the universities, ESPN, the bowl games. I'm wondering in that mix if any of the corporate partners ever try to exert any influence over what they would like to see happen, or are they more or less kind of at arm's length?
They really don't try to exert influence, not with us anyway. They may say to ESPN, in a casual conversation, hey, I wish they would expand, or I wish they would do X, Y, or Z, but no, not ever to us. And I'll go a step forward with that. Also, ESPN doesn't have any influence. They don't try to have any influence in terms of the format and how we operate with a selection committee. And I mean, they're heavily involved in the branding, of course, but as far as the administration of the event, they're not involved, and they don't want to be involved.
Well, I think the only other question that's just popped into my mind that I'd like to ask you is obviously the big change in college athletics over the last year has been the introduction of NIL and the ability for the athletes themselves to monetize some of their involvement. Does that, do you think, have any impact going forward on the CFP in terms of maybe keeping athletes around longer, or I'm trying to imagine what other impacts it potentially could have, but I think you've probably thought about that a little bit more than I have.
Yeah, you have to remember that, Jim, that all we do is decide a national champion.
Right.
We are really 3 games to decide a national championship. And so we're in college athletics, and so we're certainly watching what happens. And my opinion is I wish that the NCAA had been able to get more on top of this earlier.
Sure.
So that maybe they could have had some parameters under which NIL could have operated.
Right.
But no, as far as the national semifinals and the championship game, we haven't seen any effect yet. We have made it available to student athletes to monetize around the game itself. We haven't lent our marks to any of that because people are in our family and have the right to use the marks.
Right.
But we had some activation on the part of student athletes around the events, but not a lot. And
Sure.
I think that will probably build over time, and as we watch and see what the NCAA does to again get some parameters around what NIL means.
No, absolutely. We still lots of evolution to come there. So, Bill, I appreciate again so much you taking a few minutes and answering those questions, and it's been a pleasure. And hopefully we can continue this conversation in whatever way, shape, or form. But just want to say thanks once again.
Well, glad to do it, Jim. And again, thank you for the opportunity. Take care.
You too. And on behalf of everyone at Ticket Manager, thank all of you for watching and listening. And please join us again for the next episode in the All Access interview series.